I want to start off by saying that I didn't want to make this video. I have mixed feelings on my last negative FNAF video, and I'll be totally honest, I do not like to wallow in negativity. I'm Security Breach's biggest defender, for fuck's sake. I like FNAF. This game, though, this game ruined my fucking life. I hate wasting time, so let's just get into it. I'm gonna kick things off with a story recap, so we're all on the same page of what my understanding of this game's plot is. I'm not really interested in a big theory video here, and this game is pretty straightforward, so hopefully this should be brief. Here's the timestamp though, for people who have already played the game. You play as Arnold, an overworked Fazbear technician who gets one last pickup job at the end of his shift. He's given a data diver and told to recover the mimic blueprints from Edwin Murray's office in the Murray Costume Manor. After the world's worst Willy Wonka tour, you get all the upgrades for your data diver and head back to the security office, where Fazbear Dispatch asks you to deposit the fully upgraded security diver into the MCM inventory tubes. Do this, and Fazbear fires you for misplacing company property. Then the mimic kills you in your car. But you actually have a second choice in the security room. On the computer, there's a program called parachute.exe. Run that, and you get to meet Fiona. No, that's not Fiona the character, Fiona in Leet speak, a machine that fans should know as Nexus from the Security Breach Ruin DLC. She tasks you with giving Edwin one last message, to finish M2. Run through Edwin's house while the mimic tries to kill you, get to the attic and run cradle.exe, and boom, that's the game. Flee through the burning costume manor as a final set piece, and watch your ending cutscene. That doesn't really sound like a lot, right? I mean, neither did Security Breach though. Like with all FNAF games, most of the cool stuff is in background details and the theories they lead to. So let's start off with some of my theories just so you guys are on the same page as me. The most important thing to get out of the way is that this game suggests that Fazbear didn't really want M2. You see, while playing the game, you find these security logs. Oh, and don't worry, we'll be coming back to these fucking logs later. But as you're playing, you find these logs, and one of them straight up says that Fiona was your operator for most of the game. Given the mimic's modus operandi and it asking you to put together the full data diver in the inventory machine, we can assume that this whole thing was orchestrated by Fiona so that it could get its hands on the blueprint and security clearance. The question is, what for? Well, we'll come back to this game's story when I talk about the secret ending in a little bit. Just keep all of this in the back of your mind. For now though, my complaints can begin. I'm going to start with some minor visual complaints and go from there. First, this wasn't really much of a FNAF game, was it? As far as actual FNAF imagery goes, you get the two areas where the mimic dons a Chica costume, one room with old prototypes, and then a chase with Music Man. You spend the majority of the game hiding from the new characters which are unique to the MCM. Problem is, they're just not very interesting because they're only costumes. Unlike Freddy in the gang, each mascot doesn't really feel like a character with a personality, rather, they're just theming, an aesthetic that was used to sell a product in-universe. The one exception to this seems to be the Jester from Jess Cereal, whose commercial was actually so unnerving that I almost considered liking the game.
Just kidding.
Oh my god, I fucking hate this commercial, and that child.
Except, you know, none of that actual personality seems to make it to the mimic when the mimic is, you know, mimicking the character. Even the iconic imagery we tend to associate with the mimic rarely comes up. There's one small segment where you're stalked by the mimic in the white tiger costume, and Jackie, the character that's all over this game's marketing and promotion, is barely in the game. There's one chase sequence with them, and that's literally it. There's some cool stuff going on with the moon costume and the Storytime Theater, but my biggest problem with the visuals is that you can't ever fucking see anything. I have never seen a game with lighting this bad. Real quick, I do want to take some time to say that these issues have been somewhat patched. There was a patch for NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards. However, the issues were not made known to players before launch. When I launched the game, this was my experience with it. It's unfortunate that I didn't have the best experience possible, but I didn't make this game. I didn't release it. It's fully on Steel Wool to make sure that their game runs the way it's supposed to. And my graphics card may not meet minimum specs, but all of my other PC parts do. Plus, I played this on other people's machines and had similar lighting issues on there as well. So while I'm sure my graphics card exacerbated the issue, it definitely didn't cause it. It has you set the gamma when you first boot it up, but then once you're playing the game, all of the options have no adjustment for it. So if you misjudge the gamma initially and want to adjust it, too bad. But even if you set it right, sometimes the game will just randomly decide to change the gamma anyway. The very first time I booted up the game, this is what I was met with. There were even times where I booted up the game and the gamma was different from when I last played. It doesn't seem to affect the actual lighting in-game. For my playthrough, I had the gamma turned all the way up, but for whatever fucking reason, my footage is still dark as shit. Thankfully, the mailboxes stand out enough. They're often in well-lit areas, and even when they're not, they have lights on them so you don't miss them. Collectibles, on the other hand, are these shiny little gift boxes, but if you think that glossy texture will protect you from missing them, I promise you're wrong. I missed one that I had already opened on a previous save file, and it's right in front of you when you open the door. There are times where I bumped into stuff, and I can't even see what I'm bumping into. I'm not saying this place needs to be lit up like the Pizzaplex, but if the game looks like I'm running through black voids, you have failed to light the hallway properly. And you know, the lighting is pretty bad, but it's definitely not the worst part of this game. No, that would have to be its gameplay. There's a reason I skimmed over most of this game's exploration, and that's because it feels like your time is being wasted 24/7. Once you start exploring the MCM, you'll quickly notice that there are these mascot costumes everywhere. As you play, every time you enter a room, one of those costumes will activate and hunt you down. Problem number 1, the AI is bad. Like, really, really, really bad. Sometimes you'll be spotted from across the room. Other times, you'll stand 2 feet away from the mimic as it walks by and it won't notice you. Sometimes, the mimic will spot you from across the room and run over, only to get confused along the way and go back to its default search behavior. The mimic can hear the sound of you interacting with the game world, even down to bumping into stuff, but also you can climb out of a locker directly behind it and sneak away without it hearing you. Sometimes, the mimic will see you and charge you, only to get stuck behind parts of the environment and run in place. Is Chica stuck behind something? Yep. There's Chica! Let me get real close so that this shows up on camera. There we go. When the mimic sees you hiding in a locker, it can pull you out and jump scare you anyway, but only sometimes. I guess object permanence isn't the mimic's strong suit. This leads to excruciating gameplay, where at some times you feel confident sprinting from one hiding spot to the next, only to be spotted from across the goddamn room and chased down. Or conversely, you spend like 5 full minutes sitting in a locker waiting for the mimic to walk away, only for you to get out of the locker and immediately get spotted from across the room, then chased down again, so you have to get back into the locker and wait for it to walk away again. Does that seem fun to you? Because imagine having to deal with everything I just mentioned, and also track down collectibles in an area that you've already spent an hour in. There were so many moments where I would find a collectible, spend 20 minutes just trying to find my way over to it and collect it, only to die on my way back to the inventory receptacle. Except sometimes it doesn't even matter when you do get back to the inventory receptacle safely, because you can go out of your way to look for a collectible, take it to the tube, make sure it's safe and sound, only for the game to decide to reset all of your progress the next time you die, sometimes more than 10 minutes later, because the game's auto-save locations are completely arbitrary. It doesn't save at every loading zone, but it does save at some of them, and it also saves at every elevator and at the main security room. This happened to me multiple times, and for some of the collectibles, I didn't notice until I was at the end of the game when it was too late to do anything about it. Now imagine having to deal with all of that, the waiting, the bad AI, the searching every area top to bottom hoping to find something new, while also getting roadblocked by this game's horrible puzzles. They're either laughably easy or ridiculously convoluted, with no in-between. So many of this game's puzzles are just sneaking to locations and flipping switches or doing Bioshock-esque fluid puzzles. But I think the worst of these have to be the damn door codes. You see, as you're playing, you come across these special doors that need codes to be accessed. The problem is, they're almost never intuitive. Let's start with the final door, the only door with a randomized code. In order to learn what the code is, you have to sneak around Edwin's mansion and collect 5 home videos. Then, you watch these home videos in an order suggested by a photo. At the end of each video is a barely visible number that you write down. Put them all together in the order that the photo suggests, and boom, you get your code. Sounds easy, right? Well, I actually found 3 different codes. What? It literally says David! Oh, it's the holes on the... Oh, it's on the tapes! Ugh! What? Okay, I guess I have to go down and look again, because this game's puzzles are not very well made. Why would you put different numbered holes on the back of each fucking tape if those holes didn't correspond to a number that you input into the keypad? Why would you build a game that way? Dude, are you fucking kidding? This is bad asset design. Are you fucking kidding? The worst has to be the puzzle required to enter the Storytime showroom. Why? Well, let me just walk you through it and you tell me if it sounds annoying. First, you need to enter a code to enter the birthday showroom after your initial visit. Then, you have to hide from the mimic and make your way to the end of a secret hallway which has another door with a code. The hallway has TVs that show a stack of blocks but give no indication on how to derive a password from it. I assumed that you color match the numbers into pairs where one half of the pair corresponds to the order of the numbers in the passcode. This was not the case, and after multiple hours of trying to open this door, I gave up and ended up Googling the password. Look, if you want doors that require random codes to open, I think that's fine, but you need to clearly telegraph the method of finding those numbers. Thank God not all of the door codes were randomly generated, or I might not have completed this game. Oh, but if you thought that was the end of this puzzle, you're wrong. See, in the corner of this new secret room we unlocked, there are two switches, and this brings me to my next hiccup. You see, these switches are programmed completely different from every other switch in the game. Normally, you only have to flip a switch once, but with these switches, you can flip them up and down as you please. This different switch behavior led me to believe that they did nothing and weren't even supposed to be there. And why not, right? This game is buggy enough as is, that's not a far stretch of the imagination. Anyway, flipping these switches allows you to redo the liquid puzzle from the Big Top showroom, where you can then replay the games. But there's nothing in-game that indicates this, you're just supposed to know that flipping these two random switches in a completely different showroom would allow you to then do this. After completing the liquid puzzle, you go to the Clown Teeth game, knock out one clown fully, and then on the second clown only take out 4 of its teeth. Now you can crawl into its mouth and find a tunnel into a secret maintenance area. After navigating the tight hallway and avoiding the mimic, you find another switch that lets you go back up the hallway you just went down and past some debris that had previously blocked your path. Then, and only then, do you find the door that lets you into the Storytime showroom, and the puzzles are made even worse by this game's awkward controls. On keyboard and mouse, you hold down click and swing your mouse around to maneuver your arm, and on consoles it's much the same. You hold down the right trigger and swivel your camera stick around to maneuver objects. This frequently leads to the camera spasming after you interact with an object. Sometimes, the time it takes to interact with an object also gets you noticed by the mimic, even when it's across the room. So you have to pray you finish the action and find safety before it gets over to you and you get jump scared and then have to restart the entire area from the beginning. All of these gameplay quirks beg the question, why wasn't this released in VR? Not every problem I have would be instantly fixed, those puzzles would still be god-awful, but at the very least, a lot of them would be alleviated. Visibility would be improved because not only is the screen right up on your face, but it's higher clarity than 1080p, and you can physically look around the room while you're performing actions. Waiting in lockers? That's not boring anymore. When you're immersed in a world, that becomes tense. The weird-ass controls that occasionally fuck with your camera? You can just use your hands, no camera confusion there. It's very obvious that this game was designed with VR in mind, and releasing the flat version first does not change that. How do I know? Well, beyond the weird-ass controls, there are various areas in this game that are just designed the way a set piece in a VR game would look. Take the welcome show, for example. See how it's designed so that the player has to swivel the camera to keep up the show? Well, that's a lot harder to do with a mouse than it is by turning your head around to look, which is why most flat-screen games don't construct set pieces that way. Instead, they construct the piece so that most of it fits into view of the camera. When they're not doing this, you get actual cutscenes where the camera angle changes in order to accommodate the scene's visuals. The way that locations in Secret of the Mimic are set up is very tour-like, almost like you're walking through a virtual haunted house. If you haven't played a single-player VR title before, it might be hard to imagine how what I'm describing is different from long-running horror franchises like Resident Evil. And it's not different. kinda. The reason that Resident Evil 4 was ported to VR before the remake came out, after all, is because that style of gameplay is well suited to VR titles. But you can tell the difference. Non-VR titles tend to only place the minimum assets that are necessary for the area, so that way performance can be optimized for as many different devices as possible. VR titles, on the other hand, cram as many assets into a space as possible to make sure that the player is captivated by the spectacle of their environment. Obviously, resource management is still important, but it becomes a secondary goal in making sure that the player is as immersed in their environment as humanly possible. Okay, so the game was made for VR and it would be better in VR, but making games is expensive. What about development costs and making money? I hear you saying with your whiny middle school voice. And that excuse would have worked in 2021 when Security Breach came out, but Steel Wool has grown significantly since they released the first Help Wanted. They may not be a AAA studio, but they're definitely AA by now. If they wanted to, they could have hired the additional help they needed, or even waited to release the game until it was actually finished. I understand that people complain about not being able to play these games since they don't own a VR headset, but less than 10% of players have the achievement for getting the glitch security permissions, and even less than that have all the logs. Let's be real here, this is FNAF. The fanbase does not play these games, they watch YouTubers play them. Some people don't even do that, they just watch YouTubers talk about them. So let's not pretend that this couldn't or shouldn't have been released in VR with VR controls, because that's just not true. Steel Wool made a choice not to release them at launch, and the consequences, in my opinion, were a worse title. VR aside, I want to switch gears to talk about what happens when you collect all of those collectibles. Well, you use them in a program called moon.exe, a really cute program that's meant to look like an old text adventure game. For those who have been waiting for me to say something positive, this is it. This segment is really cool, and I have no problems with it whatsoever. I think it's a really creative way to make the collectibles relevant beyond some arbitrary number of things to collect. If 90% of this experience wasn't locked behind the final collectible I found in the Storytime showroom, it probably would have been really cool to slowly complete it as I make my way through the MCM. Obviously, that's not what happened, but there's no way the developers intentionally part off the majority of this side game behind the hardest collectible to find, right? Right? What's that? You need a tiger plush to beat moon.exe, and you only get the white tiger plush after you start the game on New Game Plus, so even if you did do everything right and found all the collectibles, you still have to complete New Game Plus to get the true ending? Huh. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that's a really great way of wasting more of the player's time. Anyway, complete the adventure game and you're rewarded with a glitched security clearance for your data diver. These are specific glitched doors in Edwin's house that allow you to get the game's secret ending where you complete M2 for Fiona and turn him into David. I'll just come out and say it, this segment was not worth replaying the entire game. It's really cool, don't get me wrong, I love that no matter how quickly you press the button, the mimic still completes its attack animation before winding back up and being safe. The problem I have is just that it's so damn short. After the newly programmed David bot goes to bed, the game fades to black. No dialogue from Arnold, no scene where he drives away from the MCM like the other two endings. The game just kinda ends here. And isn't that just fucking rich? Isn't that hilarious? I had to replay the entire game to get to this point. No skips, no shortcuts, and of course, the same time-wasting problems that make me lose my goddamn mind while I make my way through every area. I cannot fathom why this had to be New Game Plus content. When you get the game's worst ending, where you give up the data diver willingly, it allows you to reload from the point of no return. So why is this not a mechanic for every ending? It's the same point of no return. It's not like a new point of no return. If you wanted to make sure the player has completed the true ending before getting the white tiger plush, then just do that. It's programming. You can make the flag that spawns the tiger plush whatever the hell you want. Why did I have to replay the entire game just for 2 additional audio logs that explicitly tell me things I was already supposed to theorize about, and a 30-second ending that has no conclusions? This game is so concerned with telling you about the past that it actively does not care about the story in the present that it's trying to tell. In fact, a lot of the game's reveals happen to be what I would consider footnotes on the timeline. It establishes a lot more specific info about Edwin Murray's business and how it was failing, how it was bought out, and Edwin's motivations for building the Mimic in the first place, but what did we actually learn? We already knew his business was failing, we already knew it was bought out by Fazbear Entertainment, and we already knew that Edwin built the Mimic for his son. Details are cool, but they aren't meaningful details. Knowing about Edwin's dead wife doesn't do anything to enhance the story, it makes the origins for the Nexus system all the more complicated. The craziest thing that this game does confirm is the fact that Henry still exists in a continuity where Edwin and his son also exist. That's fine, but confirming the business relations of the FNAF world is not the driving force that you should be building an entire game around. You could say that this game gives us a bit more insight on the Mimic and its motivations, but no, it's not more insight, it's just more of the same insight. This game reinforces everything we thought we knew about the Mimic, which is great, we love to have confirmation in this franchise, but it doesn't do anything else with its runtime. The franchise story hasn't advanced meaningfully since Ruin, and even that just felt like setup for a future game we're going to get eventually. Sure, this game is set in the past, but you could have given us something new to chew on. Don't just allude to Fall Fest. How insulting! This game has movies that you find. Why is there no, found footage recording of the Fall Fest fire? Throw us a curveball. Maybe the history wasn't what we thought it was, or there was some hidden piece of lore we weren't aware of. Don't get me wrong, any info is good info, but the problem I have is that none of this feels particularly significant. I don't care that Edwin feels inadequate to his dad or has marital spats with his wife. Edwin is dead and gone and is not an active force in the plot. I don't care that William Afton orchestrated the downfall of Edwin's company. Anybody who knows this franchise can assume that. The most interesting new thing this game introduces is the possibility that Edwin invented Remnant by accident when recycling the old Springlock suits. But that's just a theory because, like most of this game's cool ideas, it doesn't seem that interested in exploring it. Why properly explain how the Mimic works and how many copies of the program there are when instead the game would rather tell me over and over and over again how Edwin was a bad husband and father who wants his wife and son back? This game feels like a series of footnotes sprinkled across dark hallways with puzzles that interrupt you for 20 minutes at a time and the occasional home movie from a broken home. Okay, so the story's lacking and the gameplay is frustrating. So what? One bad game does not ruin a man's life. And I hear you. Trust me. I hear your voices all the time, in my head. But I feel like you're not grasping the gravity of my situation. I don't hate this game because it's bad. Well, I do, but there are a lot of bad games. I hate this game because it turned my excitement into frustration at every point. I have over 37 hours in Secret of the Mimic. I spent 37 fucking hours looking for every log, every stupid fucking collectible. I played through this game halfway, got a new computer, and had to restart because Steelwool didn't enable cloud saves. I played through segments over and over and over again, dying and waiting, dying and waiting, dying and waiting. Every new area I entered was begging for me to explore it, and every move I made caused me to die and restart. These are 37 hours I can never get back. Days of my time wasted. I wanted to like this game. I really did. I waited 3 years for this game. That's a long time to wait in FNAF World. Why did this come out 2 whole years after the Mimic was introduced in a supplemental book? Imagine how much better of a story it would have been to explore the MCM not knowing what it is or who Edwin is. Then later, a book comes out that directly depicts the origins of both the MCM and the Mimic. Instead of introducing random lore in a book that nobody's going to read, the player should get introduced to a mystery first through the game, and then later ideas get directly confirmed in a book. It honestly feels like these two things are released in the opposite order of each other, and I can't fathom why other than Scott's overzealousness to explore a new idea. Longtime FNAF fans will know that Scott does this a lot. When he comes up with a new idea, he integrates it immediately. We saw this when The Silver Eyes came out, and he introduced William Afton. We saw this when FNAF World came out, and it introduced Circus Baby well before Sister Location was even announced. And most damagingly, we're seeing it now, where the Mimic gets introduced in a random spin-off book 2 whole years before the game actually releases. Look, it's great that Secret of the Mimic exists, and we can finally put the Tales game debate to bed. It's not a crime for Secret of the Mimic to be a bridge release. But it's not a full game. Its mechanics are buggy and unsatisfying, with a half-finished story that mocks you for wanting new information. I would not charge people $40 for this, and I certainly wouldn't hype it up as the next mainline title for over a whole year. If Steel Wool were honest about the game and didn't spend literally an entire year promoting it, I probably wouldn't mind this that much. But that didn't happen. Steel Wool hyped the shit out of this game and got me all excited. And then, at every point, the game took that excitement and turned it into frustration, then hatred. Anyway, save yourself the $40 and do what every FNAF fan does and just watch your favorite YouTuber play the game.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Like I said, I was initially really excited for this game, but it just didn't really stick with me throughout the experience. I really do wish the game had released in VR, and I probably will be playing it when it does come out in VR. I meant it when I said that I thought that would elevate the game a lot. Anyway, if you liked today's video, please be sure to subscribe and comment, give the video a like, all that good stuff. And consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/theflinchydino.
Time to play! No? Well, time